Hi friends, thank you for tuning into today's episode. So today's episode is a bit different. I'm going to be interviewing my friend Camilla, who is, would you describe yourself as an expert or?
I'm not quite an expert, but I am someone who's deeply committed to really walking this path of what it really means to have a conscious relationship, and to strengthen relationships between not just men and women, just all different types of relationships in life.
Nailed it. Okay, I love that. So you heard it best. One of the goals of this channel, of course, is to try and cover as many different aspects to spiritual growth as possible. And of course, there's certain areas where I lack experience and knowledge, and of course, conscious relationships is one of them. So I think it's wise to bring in someone like yourself who has more depth of understanding and more experience, and you could, of course, share, what you've learned so far with the audience, and hopefully it can resonate.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Dom.
No worries, anytime. So we've known each other for quite a long time, and we spoke about conscious relationships quite a lot, and I feel like you definitely do have a lot of knowledge and a lot of understanding in that area. So I trust your expertise, and I'm very picky in terms of choosing who to follow. So
Thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah, I trust your advice. So first of all, could you just explain a little bit about yourself, just to give the audience a kind of understanding of who you are, and how did you get to this point of wanting to talk about this subject?
How did I get to this point? Well, a little bit about me. So I'm Camilla Nunn, and I am a yoga teacher. I am a massage therapist. I work a lot with the body and moving emotions. And I think I became fascinated about relationships from quite a young age. I like most young girls, really craved deep love. I was very much a relationship person. But it wasn't until the breakdown of one of my long-term relationships that I started to really question a lot about the modern dating scene. So when I met my first boyfriend, I wasn't dating online. There's no really such thing as online dating. But when we split up, I went online and did a bit of dating, and I was just quite shocked, really, with what was going on. I felt like it was almost soulless, and it upset me. And I just really felt like from that point, I wanted to be committed to solving this problem of what is missing in relationships, what do people truly crave, and what makes relationships not only last but thrive.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great point. I think relationships are a tricky part of life to navigate when you're on a path to awakening. And it can be an area where people can run away from or deny or maybe get lost in. So I like the idea of trying to solve that puzzle as well. Try and see, the journey to awakening as an all-encompassing, all-whole journey. And also fuse awakening within relationships. Yeah. So that's kind of my interest in it. So first of all, what is a relationship existentially?
A relationship existentially is sort of like a energy between two people. So obviously there's sexual relationships, but there's also friendships, and there's family relationships. And so it's, one person, an individual, and another individual coming together, and these two energies that come together create a third energy. And that energy is a relationship. Mm-hmm. So it involves communication, it involves respect, it involves some sort of dynamic between two people.
Do you think understanding its existence existentially is helpful? Because we were just talking about that. As I think I was telling you, I spoke to someone recently who tried to claim that they don't exist. Obviously, I don't fully agree with that, but we kind of outline their existence exists within unwritten rules and ideas that exist inside the mind. Yeah. Do you think acknowledging that their actual truth within your direct experience helps them at all?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And acknowledging how relationships, how important they are for our growth, how different relationships make us feel different ways, and what that brings out in each and every one of us.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, moving on from what a relationship is, and I think a lot of the time people wouldn't even question what they are. We just think that's what they are. Well, you think you know what they are, rather. What is a conscious relationship? What is a healthy relationship? So that's the kind of answer. That's the question you've been tussling with.
Yes.
What's your opinion?
What is the difference between
Yeah.
a conscious relationship and then some of the relationships that we're having? And I'm going to talk about this in mainly to with sexual relationships, but even with friendships, I think this definitely works. And I think a lot of us are in these old structures and old paradigms of what it means to be in relationship, which is based on, you give me something to make me feel better, to make me feel more whole. And a lot of these relationships are built on things that maybe are unhealthy, attachments and conditions. Whereas a conscious relationship is about how can we come together as two whole beings and meet in love and respect in order to be able to grow. So the main thing here is growth. It's taking responsibility for your own emotions and being able to communicate in a way that really is healthy, is respectful, is conscious. Instead of maybe, someone says something and you don't like it, putting them down, making them feel shit. It's like, how can we open our hearts more? How can we live more fulfilling lives through being in partnership with someone else?
Yeah, great. So you just quickly touched on attachments and I guess unconsciousness that can come forth in a relationship. Why are attachments? It's not that they're wrong, but why are they not? They're not healthy. Yeah,
they're coming from
what are
fear.
Attachments? Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, that's a good question. What are attachments? So attachments are sort of like energetic cords that are made when we don't know who we truly are, where there's something, a wound within us, where we somehow feel like we're not whole. And we project onto this other person, God, and we think that they are responsible for giving us that feeling of fulfillment. And really, I mean, it's an illusion, because nothing can give you that feeling of fullness but yourself, to truly realize who you are. So it could be, the typical thing, anxious attachment, where you need someone else's constant approval of you, and you need their time and their energy. Or avoidant attachment. So it's like you feel that someone's too much, overbearing, so you sort of want to run away. And that's also the inability to be able to sit with the uncomfortable emotions. So there's so many different types of attachment styles, but I think really being conscious of what's going on inside is the best way to start to understand that.
A lot of people talk about like, attachment styles. Is there any truth to that? And what are the pros and cons of understanding your attachment styles?
The more awareness I think we can have, the better. The more awareness of ourselves and what's going on deep inside, because that's where it begins. You can't have any healthy relationship if you don't understand who. It's not even who you are if you don't understand your own triggering and your own wounds.
Yeah, no, definitely. What are the possible traps of understanding attachment styles and going into... the reason why I bring this up is I recently was exploring becoming more aware of myself, and I found actually I ended up getting more in my head. I ended up making something that was non-logical logical. What are the traps of what are like the pros and cons? So you've got attachment styles, you've got understanding them, but yeah, what's the other side of the coin? If there is one.
I really like that you touched on that,
Yeah.
because it's true. I think sometimes we can get too logical, and I think it's like having that balance of understanding yourself. Sometimes we do need to be a bit more logical about things, and for us to be able to understand what's going on, but then let that go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And hold it very lightly, so you can sort of step into a space with another, and come into this space of the heart where you can allow things to flow, and things don't need to be so logical, because the body is really what's telling you the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it goes beyond logic.
That's the dance between the trickiness of it.
Yeah.
Because in one aspect, it's important to have a contextual understanding, because then it guards you and it gives you some like grounds to work with in something that's groundless. But then the second point is it can then become a prison, because human interaction there is something like beyond logic to it, but also you need a framework to be able to understand it. So that's why it's so tricky, right?
Sort of knowing when to let go is really important. Let go of these things that maybe it served you for a certain point to give you growth, and then you don't need it so much anymore, and you can start to flow a bit more.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's really easy to get really attached to these ideas and think about, was this person like healed their trauma? But
and
that's just too much.
Even
right?
that, like healing, the word healing, it can be triggering, because I mean we're always evolving, we're always growing. And the minute you think, oh, to receive love, I need to be this healed person, this perfect being, then that's again, it's a trap, because it doesn't exist.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've touched on some really good points. Before we get into kind of how to make a relationship work, because there's so much to that, and change is going to be one of those points. Talk about, I guess at the beginning, you're starting out, you're having to find someone first of all, and finding the right person is probably, not saying you can find the perfect person, but finding someone that I guess is aligned with what you're trying to do, your deepest values. How do you, because you touched on like the nervous system and what your body's telling you, how do you find the right person? Because before you can even entertain the right relationship, you have to have some level of discernment. What's your opinion on that? And it's tough nowadays, right?
Yeah, it's tough these days. I think from my own experience, finding the right person is found in how your nervous system responds to that person. And that requires, you have to have a healthy nervous system to be able to find the right person, or to know whether it's someone that's good for you. So a lot of us have come from maybe relationships that have been a little bit messy, they've been a bit chaotic, so we feel like love is something that needs to be earned, that is dramatic. You have these huge highs and these huge lows, and so when you do meet someone who gives you peace, you're almost not prepared for it, because your nervous system perceives love as something that makes you feel a bit crazy. So nervous system regulation and doing the inner work first, and sometimes being alone, being alone, being in a space where you kind of you can date around and just notice, like, how is someone actually making me feel? When you get your nervous system to a point where it's very relaxed, you feel relaxed, you feel to your base, then you can start to see how someone's energy is reacting with yours.
Nice. How do you do that?
You tune into your body, and you think, okay, do I feel like I can be myself around this person? Am I worried about what I'm saying is going to trigger them? Am I worried that this person's going to judge me for what I'm saying? Is my heart racing? These little things, your body's picking up on all these subtle cues. And so if someone makes you feel relaxed, if you can feel like you could be very honest with them about yourself, and you're not hiding, then that's usually a very good sign.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is there anything else? What sort of work is one needing to do you think?
In terms of nervous system regulation?
Nervous system, and is trauma like overcoming trauma, is that part of it?
A bit, yeah. I think that's also very important. Like realizing what we are holding from past relationships or from childhood. Inner child work, like really tending to the little child within, has been like such a huge thing for me and for many people that I know, because usually when the inner child hasn't been loved enough and seen, then that inner child might be also playing up a little bit in relationships. And
Definitely. Yeah.
it's not fair. I don't think it's fair on the other person to project things onto them, expectations onto them, if it's something that only you could deal with.
Yeah. No, really good points. How do you think it would work if you've got someone who's interested in applying some of the concepts you're describing and trying some of the methods and mindsets with dating, and they meet someone that has no interest in any of that stuff? Yeah, talk to me a little bit about that. Does it matter? Does the other person have to also be doing that, or do you think it is?
I think it can be, because it's very energetic, these things. Sometimes, even if the other person doesn't really care about exploring it, your change of behaviour and all that inner work that you're doing will inevitably have an impact on the relationship, because when you change, other people change. They sense it whether they know it or not.
Yeah, totally agree. And do you think the work that people have to do, or it's like an inner exploration, isn't it? Do you think it differs between men and women? Do you think men have to kind of go on a little bit of a different journey to women?
I think so. I think,
which is ironic, isn't it? Because you're trying to unify each other, but you're doing it in like separate perspectives. It's fascinating.
It's funny because most of the work that I was previously doing was with women, and I never really got the chance to understand the male psyche and the maybe the wounds that men hold. They're very different. In general, they're very different to the wounds that maybe women hold. And women have been. I remember having a conversation with you. Like I was having some time decentering men from my life, and that wasn't in any way that I was saying that men were bad or but women have been taught, a lot of us have been taught that to be that our value is in a man's approval of us, and our value is in having a relationship and getting married and having kids. And so everything we do from the minute that we come out of our mother's womb is about relationships and being a good girl and a good woman and a good girlfriend. And maybe men actually have a very different wiring there. It's about being a provider and being strong and having enough money. And there's all these other expectations that men have on their shoulders, maybe even more, that women don't understand.
Yeah.
And so it's important that both people could take responsibility for, what inner pressure am I feeling? What am I projecting onto the other? Or what really needs to go that doesn't need to be there anymore? That's not aligned with who they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Another issue that's kind of arose at the moment is, it seems to be there's a bit of a divide between like gender perspectives, like the women's perspective on dating and then the men's. What's your view on that? We spoke about it a little bit. Is there how can you cure the gender war?
Yeah, there's definitely a gender war going on. There's definitely a gender war, and I felt it myself for a couple of years. Just this feeling of all men are like this, and they let me down. And there's so many women that have this anger.
I'm sure the men have the exact same thing.
And men have exactly this. Yeah, men have this anger as well to a women. They're just too emotional, and it's just too this and too that. But we're not really taking the time to understand the other. That's really where we're going wrong. We think just because because we don't understand it, we then dismiss it, and we think there's something wrong with the other, and we go into blame.
Yeah, it's victim, isn't it?
And victim. Yeah. But I think it's about how can we start to understand what the other is going through, and what what are on their shoulders, what they
Yeah.
need to face. And I think it's just more about compassion, really, really being compassionate, and also being very honest, and being able to be vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah.
In all relationships, like vulnerability has been, it's always been something that's helped clear
Yeah.
any blockages.
Do you also think we've actually spoke about this in person before, that it's an area of life that hasn't been given as much attention as it needs to be,
Yeah.
and it's just kind of manifested itself in our culture that we do it a specific way, that okay, this is how relationships are and this is how people court. Yet no one's really sat back and gone, oh, is that actually the best way to do it?
I feel like we need to rewrite
Yeah, like exactly.
the
If
template.
what would be, I know this is a big question, and don't feel pressure that you have to answer it because it's a big question, but how could you, let's say you could teach relationships and courting and dating in school, because it's not something we're taught. We're just left to figure it out for ourselves. We understand biology to a degree, but it's very nuanced. Like human to human connection is really nuanced. How could it be reintroduced? Let's say it was wiped clean and you get to reintroduce it. How would you reintroduce it? It's a big question, and I don't expect you to.
It's a huge question, and I think about it every day. Like, I think we need to be better communicators. We need to learn how to communicate what's going on inside.
Like our feelings.
Yeah, because we really suck at that. Like, I witnessed my parents, they loved and they still love one another, but they don't know how to communicate. And I see it in so many relationships. Like, you're scared. It's like you're scared to say the truth to someone else because you don't want to be abandoned, or you don't want to be hurt. So we hold a lot in. I think in schools, to be able to really teach our children how to communicate properly, how to actually understand what's going on inside, and to have some level of emotional intelligence would be good. I know women in general are a little bit better at understanding what's going on inside. And maybe because, it's not sort of a thing meant like boys are taught, or, it's not considered a manly thing to talk about emotions.
Yeah.
But it is sort of having a big impact on our relationships, the fact that we haven't been taught how to do that properly.
Yeah, definitely. There's also an aspect of society's pressures that would need to be wiped clean, I would imagine. There's definitely some juvenile ideas within the male domain of what a man should be that could then, I'm not saying that they're necessarily wrong, but something you might either need to pass through or at least acknowledge that it's not the best way to be. So these like cultural archetypes of, oh yeah, you should be this, you should be that. So society's pressures.
And this
what's your view?
perfect being, like, we are expected to be this perfect, being. Like, a woman needs to be like XYZ, a man needs to be like XYZ. Well, a man and a woman can be whatever they want to be. And I think because we're suppressing so much of our own human nature, we are then creating a lot of distortions
and unrealistic expectations.
Expectations of someone else, and shadows, because we're actually not allowing ourselves to be who we are. Which isn't, of course, you can be a really good person, but still have, we're human beings. We have all of our emotions. And we need to be able to accept ourselves first, and then the other for exactly who they are. Without trying to, it's not about trying to change them and trying to make them into what you want them to be, because that's not love when you think like that. I think everyone wants to be accepted for who they truly are. And we were talking before about giving that person the space to be able to be vulnerable and to express really what's going on without making them feel guilty, because we have enough guilt and we have enough shame. And it would be beautiful if we could make more room for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So in this new way of seeing let's start with the first process, dating. How can one date in a more conscious way? What are some of the practical steps they could do? How could they actually approach dating, as an example? I asked ChatGPT this question. We spoke about it. You could go on a date where you actually do something really boring, so you get to see each other's like natural, authentic self. Maybe you do like a 5 hour road trip, or you go shopping, or you problem solve. Because of course, yeah, you're trying. A lot of the problem with dating is you're putting on a front and it's hiding your authentic self. Actually, for it to work, the authentic self needs to kind of be seen and accepted first.
Totally.
Yeah. Any ideas on that front, and any practical steps? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, because for the majority of dates these days, I mean, it starts off as a drink, doesn't it?
Yeah, like a pub.
Alcohol.
Yeah.
And it's like alcohol kind of like is a good, for a lot of people, they feel like the alcohol helps them to be who they truly are.
But they're actually,
it's hiding.
Yeah,
still.
I was going to say, I just realised by saying that point that actually dating at first is hiding your authentic self, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, and that's the very thing that needs to be shown forth, because if
Yeah.
that can't be accepted, it won't work in the long run.
Yeah.
And you do everything you can to try and, kind of like what you're saying, hide who you really are and hide actually how you just generally look. Everything's manipulated in a way.
It's funny because the more perfect someone tries to be, the more it's like actually you're actually pushing the right person away, because I think the right person will absolutely love your authenticity and they'll love your messiness. We're not trying to have the perfect being.
Yeah.
I think things like, going on a road trip, doing something really, different, going away, just something where you are put into a situation that is sort of out of your comfort.
Yeah, yeah. It makes you problem solve together.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is all really interesting. What are some of the key skills then to make a relationship last and for it to go into the direction of what you're describing, like in a conscious, healthy way? So communication seems to be one of them.
Communication is like maybe number one. Respect. And we were talking about this as well, like to have done a certain amount of work where you are not seeing that other person or any person as just this human, like sexual being that's gonna give to you what you need. Like it's about once you realize you're a divine being and you kind of see yourself more. I'm getting a bit more spiritual here, as a soul that's always evolving and growing. And then when you meet that person, you see them as well as a soul who's also got, their own pains, their own, things in life that bother them, and you're a bit more compassionate to that person. Yeah. So they're more than just a partner. They're more than just this, man or woman who's there to fulfill a need. It's something maybe that can be can stand the test of time, because when it's soul to soul, it's a lot deeper.
Yeah, I like that. What's your opinion on, you hear this get thrown around a lot, and I have my opinion on it, I think but soulmates, twin flames.
Twin flames.
So you hear this and just tell me what you
It's just, again, boxes to bring you back into the mind.
Yeah. And is there any truth to that? And what are the
I mean, we can have tons of relationships in life, friendships in life, where we feel like we've got this very special connection. A lot of it is, it's energy. There's energies coming together and either complementing each other. Usually we come together because there's something that we need to learn. And if we can start to see relationships more like that, I think that will help us a lot. That we've come together to grow, to learn, to evolve. We've not come to own each other.
Yeah.
We're here in this life for a short amount of time.
Yeah.
And so, whether we're with someone and we're with them for a very short amount of time, and we learn like the most we've ever learned in our lives, or we're with someone maybe for 20 years and we might learn a fraction of that.
Yeah.
It's sort of just trusting the journey, and also trusting in life to, when it's maybe time to let go. But you can do that with love. It doesn't need to be something messy.
No, definitely. So another point that I wanted to kind of bring up regarding soulmates and falling into that trap is this concept of limerence, where you meet someone and you project, I guess, a fantasy onto that person and you're unable to see who they really are. Yeah, what's your thoughts on that? And that's something I've definitely seen in my own experience, and it's traps I've fallen into where I'll meet someone and I'm just not able to see who they really are. And then maybe 6 months to a year down the line, it becomes more clear, and I was like, oh, but I've had to go through that experience. And for that reason, of course, yeah, you gain wisdom. But it would have been nice if it's possible, or maybe I just have to go for that experience to fully understand. Is there ways to actually get to the root of that? Because obviously these ideas of twin flames, twin flames, the one, the perfect person, it's propagated in media, it's propagated in films. We see it when we're younger, it gets imprinted deep into our psyche, and we want it to be true. A lot of the emotions that we feel around someone is actually the idea of that. It's the idea of salvation towards someone else. How can someone navigate through that trap? Because it is a trap. Because it's not a true representation.
It's definitely a trap.
Yeah.
It's definitely a trap. Like this whole thing about twin flame and soulmate and even the one is a lie.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you are the one. You are the only one, and that's the truth, right? Like your relationship with yourself is probably the most important relationship you're ever going to have. And to fall in love with yourself in a very real sense, I think is the one thing we all need to learn how to do.
Yeah.
And it's like having a deep intimacy with yourself, getting to understand yourself and your complexities, and like projecting that onto someone else and fantasizing the one or twin flame onto someone else. It's like, I feel it's sort of like a trauma response, or it's diverging the attention away from maybe the inner work that we've all got to do, because we think that someone's going to come and fill in the void of maybe the incompleteness that we feel as human beings.
Yeah, because what's kind of happening is, I feel as though the truth of human connection is coming out into the mainstream just because of the fact that we're able to analyze things now in a way that's never been possible before. And we're almost going through this difficult transition of accepting that actually it's very messy, it's very difficult, and it's very nuanced. And there's also a lot of false prophets in a sense. You see it all the time. Grifters are trying to sell people the answer. Oh, just follow me, like a dating coach, and they have the
pay me
£100,000
and get the perfect relationship.
People can get obviously sucked into that. That's of course a trap too. Yeah, how are you seeing that evolution and the way it's come out? Obviously, I think we were just talking about it, that I feel that the truth is just coming out. It's not necessarily much has changed. It's just like how it all works. The dynamics of it have been brought forth, and it doesn't match our ideas of what we wanted it to be. It'd be lovely if it was, you meet someone and then it all works out perfect and then you find fulfillment that way, but that's just not the truth. So, I mean, do you agree? And also, what's your thoughts on that?
I think there's, like, people are realizing what's truly important, like what they actually really want compared to what we've been programmed to think that we want.
Yeah.
Like a relationship that I would say isn't a conscious relationship would be based on, oh, okay, because you've got money, you're going to give me security, then I want a relationship with you. It's like very base chakra, survival instinct kind of relationships. Or because this woman is beautiful and she's going to look good on my arm, then I want to have a relationship with her. And it's like, I think people are realizing, like, well, there's something deeper than that. Like, how is someone making me feel? Is this a real love? And a real love is being, it's a certain level of, what's the word? It's sort of like a humbleness and having understanding towards someone else, being patient, being non-judgmental, being able to understand that other person, to want to understand their own inner world.
Mm-hmm.
I think people are becoming more aware of maybe what they're actually deeply wanting, and the hard work it takes to get to that point of actually having a relationship that is fulfilling. It requires a lot of radical honesty, and many deaths of
What you think is true.
of what you think
Yeah.
is true,
Yeah.
to go beyond who you thought you were.
It's almost as if people would see relationships as a tool to learn rather than get.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
kind of what's coming forth.
yeah. And like this happily ever after thing that we've all been fed, it doesn't exist. I think we're always having to grow and evolve and learn how to have very difficult conversations and sort of enjoy the messiness
Yeah.
of what a normal, healthy relationship actually is.
Yeah. One point I wanted to ask you, we are constantly in a flux, we're ever changing. That's just the nature of the human experience. It's scary to see that as a fact, but it is, and it's hard to come to terms with. So what could be right in one moment could be wrong in the next. How do you navigate that complexity? Because that's an issue. You could meet someone, it's perfect, it's great. They're fluid, right? They could change at any moment. They could go from someone that you work well together, and then obviously it could completely switch. How do you navigate that? Do you acknowledge that that's a possibility straight away?
I think if both people know themselves and know their own behaviours, to enter a relationship, understanding that about the other to begin with. So if someone is a bit avoidant, they might need more time, after intimacy to process. They just might want to be alone for longer periods of time. They might need more time by themselves. They might not want to be joint to the hip.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I think as long as you can have the honest conversations beforehand and think, okay, well, this is what I know, about the other person. Am I willing to accept that? Do I love this person enough that I can kind of accept these things?
Yeah.
Because everyone's got something. There's no such thing as perfect, but it's like, how much does that person complement you in terms of what they give to your life? How do they make you feel emotionally and spiritually? And I think it's about having those agreements beforehand and always being able to communicate your needs. Like, what are you needing right now? Like, what do we need right now to feel better?
Yeah. So now, I guess, let's go into the next area of this conversation. So we'll probably lose some people now.
Yeah.
There's obviously another aspect. So we're talking about relationships from more of the human experience, the messy side of it. But there is another side of life, of course, and this is what this channel's about and the platform. It's like seeing more than that. If someone's into like spiritual growth and enlightenment,
which
and
we really hope you are into
spiritual. Yeah. And I know a lot of people that are on that journey are going to be like contemplating that question: how do you bring awakening into relationships? Because that's the start. Once someone has an insight into the true self or an insight into the nature of themselves, that's really the beginning where life can open up to a potential that you might not have realized. Yeah, talk to me about non-dual relationships. How do you integrate that kind of stuff into it?
Well, like I studied quite a lot of Tantra, and in Tantra and Hinduism we talk about Shiva and Shakti, which are masculine and feminine energies.
Right.
And that their love is union. Their love is it's a union of self, right, coming together. And Shakti is sort of like this raw primal life force energy, which represents like every part of ourselves that's forever changing. and Shiva is just this still consciousness. It's just still. It's not moving. It's, you know, rooted. And I feel like, well, if we can understand sort of that concept, we can. That's really like real love for ourselves, and you know, it's a true acceptance. It's a true compassion for who we are as human beings. It's like soul and human coming together, and it's like an unconditional acceptance of the human experience. And I think then realizing that within the self, when you do step into a partnership, hopefully if that other person as well has that similar understanding, then nothing becomes so heavy anymore. Even the heavy feelings, even the messiness actually becomes quite joyful.
Yeah.
And it becomes very pleasurable to explore. Like it's I wouldn't say a game, but it becomes just this very sort of light exploration.
Yeah.
Where you're not seeing the other as human. Like, you're not so attached to this person is just human. It's like, well, this person is also divine.
Yeah.
And everything that is moving through us and what's moving through this relationship is here to help us grow.
Yeah. I think it's a shame because people get scared of this idea, maybe because of false narratives in like new age movements, and they use these kind of esoteric understandings as almost like beliefs, and when people hear these concepts they switch off. But actually it's something that can really be beneficial if explained maybe in a more nuanced and better way, because all awakening is just waking up to your direct experience. Like, what is the truth to your direct experience? And as you were just explaining, there is, I mean, obviously you can go deeper into this, but there's a consciousness. Like, you are conscious, you know that, but it's investigating the nature of that and realizing that actually that's all you have to know the world. And understanding the nature of consciousness actually goes a lot deeper than you think. It's almost like becoming your own scientist. It's an internal science experiment. You can see that the thing that you're looking for is within you. It exists within your experience, quote unquote. And everyone shares the same experience. Everyone's conscious of reality, right? So that, it's such a great step forward, but it's also very interesting because I understand that, but I've never really brought that understanding to a relationship at all. I've never necessarily been with anyone that shares that same insight. Not that it necessarily matters, but it does feel as though if you can kind of work from that perspective, because you can find wholeness within yourself, right? So if you understand that you are whole, directly, not a belief. This is where people get tricked, isn't it? It's like,
you have to feel it.
Yeah, do you really feel it? Yeah, it's like, do you actually feel that you're whole, or are you just tricking yourself? Because you can play mental games with yourself, right?
It's easy to do that.
Yeah. So, have you? Because also we've spoke about some maybe of the messy side, the uncomfortable side of human relationships.
Yeah.
Which it needs to be spoken about because people, it's like in the shadows. Now there's the magical aspect, in the sense that if you can come to that realization that there's an aspect to you that is whole, that then opens up a real limitless potential, but it might not look like the way you want it to look. What's your experience?
It's a feeling, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a feeling of what's my experience of what that looks like.
Yeah. Have you? Just talk to me. How has that understanding helped you?
I think having that understanding has not even. It's improved every relationship in my life, every single relationship, because everything feels lighter. I'm not so affected by the full spectrum of emotions that we have as human beings. Like, you take responsibility as well for yourself. You're not expecting someone to fix you or to make you feel better. You take responsibility for the words that come out of your mouth, for the way that you treat yourself, for what you choose to, you have more boundaries. You're able to do all these things very naturally, without feeling this fear of how you're going to be perceived. Because you are already, you've gained everything, you've lost everything. There really is only now. And you're not afraid of, you know, things that you might have made you, I don't know, act a certain way before. Things just feel richer. Relationships feel more nourishing. It's a space where you're free to be 100% yourself. So you attract more friendships and relationships, you know, where even in the work setting, you attract things that resonate with your true authentic self.
Yeah, that's amazing. Where do you see relationships and the way humans communicate heading? Where is it evolving to, do you think?
I think more towards this. I have felt a lot in the interactions that I'm having, this real craving for a real soul deep love. And I think before that there has to be chaos. There has to be things that come up. There has to be shock, because I mean, how would you get there otherwise? So I think we are going through this like birth canal, and it's going to be a bit messy, but I think to actually sort of enjoy the ride is where what we need to be able to do.
And kind of not get caught up into red herrings and traps.
Yeah, there's a lot of traps
of like, as you were just talking about earlier, taking a real strong stance in a specific like ideology around it, and you know, because some people can do that, and it's always from a negative experience. It's rare that someone would want to like just be by themselves for the rest of their life because they've just had a loving, amazing relationship with someone. They're not going to be like, oh, you know what, I'm done now with everything. I'm dating. I'm just going to be myself because I've had this incredible experience. It's normally the other way around.
Exactly. I was going to say something as well. What was I going to say? Taking the time to like just, you know, really be aware of what you're putting into your consciousness. Like there's all these things about, you know, how we should be acting and what a relationship is, and all these, you know, things that we're taking into our minds. But I think one beneficial thing would be like just to take some time out to really go inward and to realize like what is it you actually want from a relationship. Like really, really deeply ask yourself 100%. Some big questions.
Yeah, 100%. That's been one of my greatest tools, is taking periods of isolation by yourself. You come to such incredible insights, because it's hard to gain those insights when you're just in the normal society and hustling away. Your mind's just taken away, right?
It's not even for relationships, isn't it? It's for all everything, parts of life, like what truly makes you happy.
No, absolutely. Is there any other aspect you think we might have missed that is important? And
Ooh. God, we could talk about this all day. What other parts? Not being afraid to write your own rules.
Yeah, definitely.
We don't have to do it like how we've been taught. We can do things very differently. It's okay to make it up. That's the beautiful thing about these times that we're in. We don't have to be in relationships because they give us security.
Yeah, I totally agree.
We really can be in relationships because they give us something so much deeper than that.
Yeah. What's your idea on, in Buddhism, they actually reject romantic relationships because they think it's just a form of unconscious attachment. And some people might argue actually that because it's messy, don't even bother. What's your thoughts to that?
You're denying life when you think like that. You're denying who you truly are, because we do, as human beings, I mean, we have desire. And I think I can only talk from my experience. Since I've really learned that my desire is sacred, my desire is something that's leading me forward to a sense of wholeness. That has changed my life, and that has, I mean, it's been an incredible journey of following desire. When I've tried to suppress desire, that's given me more pain, and I think that creates room for so much distortion. To be able to actually understand our desire and to honor it, I think, and to be able to actually speak about it is one of the most important things.
It just gets shoved down, doesn't it? It
Yeah,
becomes
yeah.
a shadow.
Anything that we suppress is going to come out somewhere. So we better get used to talking about
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And we have to as well be very compassionate with others and non-judgmental with others when they do open their hearts to be able to talk about what's going on
Yeah.
inside.
Yeah, absolutely.
Think about how many breakups happen because people are too afraid to tell.
Yeah. So yeah, then there's the other side of the coin where I can't remember where I read it, but they were saying relationships is almost like a human need. This need for some level of intimacy. Do you agree with that? And
I
it should be
believe
honoured in
that.
a sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot. I mean, most people I've talked to want that, and we need intimacy. We need it. Sometimes we need other people to help. To help. Yeah, I mean, we're wired for love and connection.
Yeah. What's your views on marriage then, and that whole ballpark? Because
I mean, each to their own. I personally think that I don't personally feel like marriage is something I really even think about. I believe in coming together every day and choosing each other. But I don't believe that we need to necessarily have marriage.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's something that, is bad. I think marriage can be a beautiful way to, to celebrate love.
Yeah.
But maybe it could be like, I always think a ceremony of love, just being able to celebrate it.
That's what it's meant to be, right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's kind of been infected.
Yeah.
Okay, let's now go on to the other darker aspect. So you got marriage, you got now breakups and divorce. How do we approach that consciously?
Again, coming back to what has this taught me? Like, how has this other being helped me to grow? And like I said, you could be in a 20-year, 30-year, 40-year marriage or relationship and you don't really have that much growth. And then you can be with someone for you can know them for 1 year or 1 week. And it could be the most amount of growth you've ever had in your life. And so it's like realizing what am I learning through this, and being able to honor that person for what they've given you, whether it was, absolutely beautiful or very messy and painful. It's taught you something.
Yeah.
So yeah, taking the time to sit and to thank that person and to end it in a way that feels peaceful.
Why do relationships always seem to start so great and then so wrong? It's annoying.
Maybe we're putting too much pressure on the other, and maybe we're not being honest as well with. Sometimes we can blind ourselves. We know that person might not be ready, or they might not be right for us.
If people can walk into that understanding and actually learn the process of ending the relationship, and also maybe even rejecting the relationship or just rejection, and soothing that process, then people might fear it less, because there's a lot of the reason why people are so scared to actually enter into this domain is a fear of pain.
People are so afraid of pain and rejection that they end up creating pain and rejection. And if we can realize, we come into this world alone. We leave this world alone, and anyone that comes in between that is beautiful. But we have to realize, everything is permanent.
Yeah.
Even marriages that last 80 years, it's still permanent. So we have to get used to, loss, the feeling of loss, which, if you were to get really deep, it is never loss, because we're always whole. But, people are always going to be coming and going.
In a sense, relationships are a great teacher to awaken, because they do show you really difficult aspects of life to deal with, and it's constantly pointing you to something deeper within yourself, always, at all times. They're very triggering. They bring out sides to you that you might not be able to see if you're just by yourself. And if you can see it as that, as a guide, as a pointer in a sense, it's another great way to use that. I've heard it so many times. People get into like spirituality through relationships. You hear it all the time. I went through this bad breakup, so I went and did this ayahuasca retreat. I went to meditate with the monks.
Yeah.
You hear that all the
Morning.
time. I literally was speaking with a friend about this. He had the same thing. Yeah, they helped me a lot, actually healing the ending of a relationship, especially like a special one. I remember I broke up with someone once and I went straight into a 10-day meditation retreat, and they gave me a cell to sit in. It was like this padded wall. I just had this cushion and it was tough. But after about 7 days of just really powerful, difficult emotions, it just left my system, and what was left was just appreciation, because I was able to understand, it's just a misperception. What I was putting on this person already exists within inside me.
That's such a powerful thing.
Yeah,
to
it's just
realise.
kind of like, yeah. You mentioned it earlier about mirroring. Like, what is that? I know you spoke about it briefly to me just before we
Yeah, it's
pressed
like,
record, but
well, two people can come together and you can be like mirrors, right? You're kind of reflecting
yeah,
back that
yeah,
person
yeah.
what's going on inside, and that can be really kind of challenging
Yeah.
and painful, but ultimately there to help you grow and to help you
Yeah.
you evolve.
Yeah. Now, this is a whole nother subject that would need another lecture, a podcast on, or interview, is sexuality, because that obviously is a huge side to relationships, and that, similar to relationships, has got its own misunderstanding. It's difficult to
Yeah.
speak about it, and
So
it's almost
much.
like shoved down. Just briefly, because obviously it's just again another whole ball game. What's your opinion on that, and how can people approach that with consciousness? So if you look at it if you go too, if you theorize it about it too much, and like from a Darwinian perspective, if you get into theory of evolution and you see like certain studies done about how humans mate and animals and stuff, it can be kind of scary, because it seems antithetical to long-term partnership. And some people actually weigh on that as evidence to suggest that we're not monogamous, and there's all these debates around it. So, but in my opinion, obviously it's just one aspect of a larger picture.
Yeah, oh my God, it's so complex, this subject. I think about it every day, and even you just saying that, there's so many things racing through my
Yeah,
mind
it's a
at the
whole
moment.
nother interview, that, isn't
I
it?
think, like, for us, we are sexual beings, like men and women, sexual beings, and the thing is, we do need to feel safe enough to be able to really explore and express ourselves in a way where we can be ourselves. We can allow ourselves to to come out in that sense. But safety is number one. Respect is another one. An understanding of the other is important, because men and women are sort of wired a little bit differently. But making the space to play in a relationship nothing has to be, when there's so much stress in a relationship, it's sort of, then sex can kind of become a bit dry. But the inner child, coming back to the inner child, where two people can come and have the space to play and to be silly and to be a bit wild and stupid, can definitely help. And also polarity. Understanding polarity for me has changed my life, because we need polarity. And sometimes actually having arguments, having disputes, being different is so important for actually like a healthy sexual relationship as well. So not to see it as something bad.
Absolutely. Is there anything else you want to add? And is there, are you doing events? How can people reach you?
Well, I think we've talked quite a lot. I think, it's a good place to end. But yes, I do events. So we're going to be doing my first Divine Union event in July, which is men and women, for men and women. And that will be probably, in West London, which I'll have more up about it soon.
Yeah.
And so it will be around this topic of like, connection and intimacy, and exploring, what's in the way of actually having really thriving relationships.
Awesome. I can put a link
Thank you.
at the bottom so people
Thanks,
can contact
Tom.
you. Yeah, but thank you so
It's
much for
so
coming
wonderful
on.
to talk with you.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do it again, hopefully.
Definitely.
And yeah, keep doing what you're doing. I really enjoyed the conversation. And like I said, it's an area where I have an interest in it, but I don't feel I fully explored it like you have, and it's definitely something I want to speak about maybe in the future, but just offer like a nice perspective, just what you're saying, to help people who are looking to essentially wake up and go on more of a spiritual journey, to then guide them in that area, because it's so easy to, there's so many aspects to the human experience, just to try and like cover it all. Yeah, it's difficult, but yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
Nice to speak with you.
No worries.
Thank
Anytime.
you.
Cheers.